Welcome to Jewish Wisdom for Coping with a Pandemic. We are 15 months into our journey so far. I think we have a ways to go. We're sort of like the Israelites in the wilderness. We don't really know the destination. We don't know how long it will take us to get there. But we know if we stick together, we're going to be better off than if we don't. So let's take a moment to create a sacred space together. Close our eyes and take in a deep breath through the nose and hold. And exhale through the mouth and hold. And inhale through the nose and hold. And exhale through the mouth and hold. And as you go at your own speed of inhaling and exhaling, if thoughts should come into your head, just observe them and let them go, like watching a car move past on the road. Now is not the time for solving problems. Right now, all you need to do is inhale through the nose and hold, and exhale through the mouth and hold. And on your next inhale, say to yourself, Shema. And on the exhale, listen. Shema, listen. And Shema, we're listening deeply, without judgment, without offering advice. In Shema, we are listening with an open heart. Shema, listen. And when you're ready, you may open your eyes. I opened my eyes. We have four new people when Paul logs on. Hello, Harry, Joanne, and Wendy. Welcome. Today, we are going to be focusing on the soul trait of trust, which is bitachon in Hebrew. It's one of the more challenging soul traits. Just a quick reminder to where we've come in our Tikkun Midot curriculum. For the next 2 weeks, we'll be doing trust or bitachon. And then on the 22nd, we don't have a meeting, so I'll be on vacation going to visit my in-laws in Phoenix. And then we'll have another month with 2 additional soul traits, faith and order. And then after that, I need to figure out what we'll do. So for today, as is our custom, we'll begin with a check-in to see if you tried any of the practices for last week, or if you had Musar show up. And one of the things last week we were talking about evil speech, and as our practice, we were sort of looking for opportunities to practice good speech or to notice good speech, things that uplifted others, etc. So does anyone would anyone like to check in and maybe share an experience or where they are? Yeah, Nancy.
Yeah, I hope this kind of is an example, and it really helped. You know, that when we find ourselves in a predicament, to try to understand where the other person is coming from. And I had a thing with my condo last week where more issues were found in a huge leak that affected 6 apartments. And then they were testing for asbestos. That sent me into a tizzy because my kids live there. And it is my condo. And I went over and I called the manager and I'm talking to her, but just saying, thank you for all you do. You know, just kind of put a different spin on it. And then I heard all this craziness upstairs. I went upstairs and sure enough, I find these contractors working, you know, it's like, well, and my immediate is like, what are you doing? People are trying to work at home. And I had to catch myself and go,
Mhm.
wow, this is really great that you're doing this, but how much longer is it going to be? And, when are
Mm.
just understanding where they're coming from. And by the end of the conversation, they smiled and thanked me for, wondering what was going on. And it diffused my
Mm.
anger. And I was really, really happy about that, even though my anxiety gets a little away from me when you're out of control and you have to wait for people to do whatever their job is. I'm still waiting to hear what the asbestos test is like, but just encountering two situations within minutes, finding
Mm.
and saying thank you for taking care of the issue really helped.
Well, thank you, Nancy. Thank you for sharing that. And yeah, it was really what we've been talking about is trying to be mindful for how we speak and trying to support other people and not kind of giving in to that urge that we all can get. It's like, wow, what, and then the next thing you know, we've sort of pouring gas on the fire, and that doesn't help anything or anyone. So that's wonderful. Anyone else have something they would like to share? Yeah, Janet.
I wrote a column about the horrors of our nursing home system, which is online right now. But I made a point of not zeroing in on any individual. I did not use the names of any nursing homes.
Mm.
I focused on the problem without creating well, the system is the demon, but I didn't make people into demons.
Mm. Thank you, Janet. Yeah, that's another great example of highlighting the problem and the issue without personalizing it and harming someone's reputation.
And I also ran the piece by my brother who had been in a nursing home for 8 weeks, and I made a point of not writing anything that would have embarrassed or demeaned him.
Mm. Yeah, wonderful. Very sensitive. That is great. Great examples of sort of mindful communication, which is really what speech is all about. It's about our decisions on how we communicate. And communication in writing is extremely important. Yeah. Stephanie, I saw you unmute. Did you have something you wanted to add, or were you just unmuting?
I'm having trouble hearing on my phone, and I'm wondering if I should just get off and go onto my computer instead.
Mm.
Can you hear me?
We can hear you fine, but if your volume's turned up and you're not hearing well, then yeah, maybe trying the computer.
Yeah, because I can barely hear, and I do have the volume up as high as it'll go.
Mm.
So I'm gonna have to say goodbye right now, but I'll come back on.
Okay.
Sorry.
And if you well, okay. Let us start to explore bitachon, trust. I shared in the email today a definition, some of which I've repeated here and some of which I've added onto. May I have a volunteer to read this first paragraph, please? I can't see all of you, so you can just unmute and start reading.
I'll go ahead and read if you like.
Oh,
Sure.
Oh, if somebody else wants to. But
Sorry.
bitachon may be one of the most difficult midot to acquire. The Hebrew root for bitachon is BTCH, which means to be at ease, to trust, and to be confident. In modern Hebrew, bitachon also means security. The Misrad HaBitachon is a defense ministry, or Bituach Leumi is the national insurance system. In classic Jewish literature, the ultimate source of this sense of security is God.
Great, thank you, Carol. So there's a couple words that sort of jump out at me, but I have been studying this for many years and I'm familiar with it. But what are sort of some of the key principles of bitachon?
It sounds like it's about being at ease and having confidence
Hmm.
because you trust in whatever higher power, whatever, to take, care of you.
Yeah, thank you, Joanne. Those were what stood out for me as well. It's sort of almost like if we embody this, it's like, well, how am I being trusting? Well, I'm feeling at ease and I'm feeling confident. And I think both of those are really important. How are they related to each other, do you think? And and in what way, if you think they are? In what way not, if you think they're not?
Well, if you trust somebody, then you'll be at ease with that person. And as you know, I had a big adventure in trust last summer, where I learned to trust some people I didn't know if I could, because I didn't know them all that well. Now I find out, yes, definitely can. And it's a step. It's sometimes a real reach. And for me, it was quite a reach. And it changed me.
In what way did it change you?
Well, maybe more open and more giving, more willing to help another person and reach out. This friend that helped me with the business last year, JC is her name, has been having some real monetary troubles. And I trust her enough now to give her enough money to get by. And I also trust the universe that if for some reason I never see that money again, it's not going to matter that much. Because they say you should never lend money to a friend unless you are willing to consider it a gift, which I am.
Wonderful, Carol. And a lot of next week, what we're going to talk about is this idea of trust in relationship to other people. So that's a really important preview. Maybe someone else to, wasn't quite sure who was the other person that volunteered to read. It sounded like it may have been Joanne.
Yes.
Okay, could you read the second paragraph, please?
Sure. Bitachon does not require absolute trust in an omnipotent God. As with all midot, there is a continuum, and we can each locate our own souls on the continuum. Some move through life with an unshakable belief in God's goodness and protection. Others are much more anxious. Neither extreme is necessarily good. Cultivating bitachon means moving towards balancing trust in a loving God or a reliable universe with taking initiative. You never have to believe something you actually don't believe to grow in bitachon. Rabbi David Jaffe, IJS Tikkun Midot Curriculum.
Great, thank you, Joanne. All right, so what does it mean to kind of balance trust in a loving God or a reliable universe? Like, maybe we'll just look at that part. What does that mean to trust a loving God or a reliable universe?
So this is Paul. I think for me, there are times in my life when I have sort of thrown my trust in, thinking about the polarities. That whatever happened was, I was swimming in a river and I was just not going to fight whatever direction the river was going. And I could do that for a while, but I do know that I can, I also need to, sort of make sure that I'm directing myself when I'm in that stream of whatever's going on, because otherwise I don't really, I'm not participating in my life. You know, I'm sort of very passive in that way. So that's one way I experience one end of it. And yeah, and the other part I think is that in terms of feeling like I can trust the universe, I definitely do swing between feeling like everything's falling apart, everything's falling down shoulders, and you know, even forgetting that God exists at that point, and then coming back to a sense of, okay, so there is a God, and there is a balance out there someplace. I just need to take some deep breaths.
Yeah, thank you, Paul. Thank you for sharing your experience with that. And it is, you know, it's a very, one of the things from this reading that we've already seen is, you know, that it's really couched as a struggle. This is not something that, you know, necessarily comes easily. And it's easy to kind of fall to one side or to the other. And I love that phrase, you know, when certain things were happening, Paul said, I wasn't an active participant in my life. You know, and yeah, so thank you. Harry, did I see your hand as well?
Well, I think it's how you deal with the unknown. And if you're going to worry about everything, or you're going to accept that that we're in God's hands and there's nothing you can do, and there's and you need to find peace, because worrying is not going to help, it's only going to make things worse. And so there's an acceptance of the universe and God, that you know, things will take care of itself. And then one of my favorite phrases is, and this too shall pass eventually. Hopefully not like a kidney stone.
Right. That is a great addendum. I'd never heard that put together with this too shall pass.
That's great.
Perfect. Yeah, I mean, just listening to you talk, Harry, reminds me when the pandemic hit last year, you know, my mother's in very fragile health and it's COPD. And while I was concerned that she might get COVID, I wasn't like overcome with worry. I was like, boy, I really hope she doesn't get it. I'm concerned. And then when she got it, it was, you know, it was terrible and it ended her life. But I do think it would not have helped anything if I'd spent the prior 2 months losing sleep, worried that she might get COVID, because there's really nothing anybody could have done about that. You know, it was just a terrible thing that happened, and worry would not have helped the cause. Let's see, I'm going to put back up our slide, because there was a second piece. You know, we talked about this trust in loving God and then taking initiative. So I think we kind of covered that with Paul's comment a little bit, you know, where there is, you know, again, with my example, there was no initiative to be taken there. You know, there's nobody I could call. There was nothing I could do. Just had to kind of hang in there and let the universe unfold as it unfolded. Okay, so one of the ways that very classic stories about how trust, or how bitachon is taught in the Torah and in the Bible, is the story of the manna, which was this food that sort of fell from the sky that God told the Israelites it would be there. This was just after the crossing of the Reed Sea, so they had seen evidence of God's power and might, and God was trying to teach them trust. Was trying to teach them, you know, this balance between taking initiative and trusting. I didn't include it on this part of the reading, but God could have just, you know, delivered the manna to every family, right? It could have been like every morning you'll find out you'll have the perfect amount of manna, but God required that people go out and collect the manna. And one of the instructions that God gave was don't take more than you need, and don't try to keep it, because if you do, it'll go bad. And indeed, that's exactly what happened. Some people hoarded it, some people kept it, and then the next morning it was filled with worms and they had to go out and collect some more. So may I have a volunteer to read this third bullet that begins, why did God choose food? Wendy, would you like to read?
Sure. Why did God choose food as the object of this test? Food symbolizes our livelihood, our parnasah. I hope I said it right. Providing for our own material well-being and that of our family has always been a core source of anxiety. Will we have enough to eat? The fear of scarcity awakened by this question is closely connected to the Yetzer Hara. An overly developed feeling of scarcity can lead to greed, violence, and the worst aspects of human behavior. Chapter from Rabbi David Jaffe.
Great, so thank you. Okay, so he's talking about this fear of scarcity. What is the fear of scarcity?
Well, when you think you're not going to have enough, I mean, it's scary. I realized during the pandemic, I myself had never been faced with scarcity. And suddenly here I couldn't get flour to make bread. I couldn't get certain things. I mean, I had enough and I keep enough canned goods around to survive for a while.
Mhm.
But I realized things could get really scarce. And this is, I'm thinking, unfortunate. This is a very new experience for me. And I got to thinking about people who really suffer real scarcity because, as I say, I was not going to starve. But it was a concern.
Yeah. So thank you, Carol. So it sounds like you had sort of a moment of empathy with people who really suffered serious food scarcity because you got a taste of it yourself, so to speak. And where does the fear come in? Like the fear of scarcity? There was an example where some scarcity sort of showed up unexpectedly. My daughter lives in Georgia, and she said when they had that ransomware attack on the gas pipeline,
yep,
like everybody started hoarding gasoline, and people were showing up with bags and filling them with gas, and there were so many people like grabbing gas that they ran out of gas. There was actually enough gas for everyone to drive around, but I see that as an example of this fear of scarcity. Oh my God, I may not have gas for my car, so therefore I better stock up. And no, I'm not even going to work, but I still better make sure that I have some extra gas.
Mm-hmm. And there's some sensibility in some of that. You don't want to run your tank down to zero and be caught with nothing. But they created a false scarcity, just as they did with toilet paper.
Right.
And other things during the pandemic. And they did that because of fear of scarcity. And in some cases, I think just sheer greed with the toilet paper thing. Look at me, I've got more toilet paper than I know what to do with, ha ha. Some of the attitude was pathetic, but yeah.
Yeah, so I'm wondering, has anyone ever had yeah, go ahead, Wendy.
I was just thinking fear of scarcity. It's not like you're in the middle of having scarcity and then you get afraid. It's more like Carol said, you're making it happen. You're thinking, ooh, if I don't have this, then I might die. I might not ever get it. And I think that's where I like that word initiative, because it does have to come in. I had a surgery and there was only one thing I could eat. And it actually became scarce at the stores. And I didn't freak out, we didn't freak out, but then we had to take the initiative and go and find it. I mean, we really did have to find it. For me, it's weird, but that's still one of those things, like scarcity.
Yeah, thank you, Wendy. Rabbi Jaffe also connected this to the Yetzer Hara, and he said that, it's often translated as the evil inclination, and he made this statement that it can sort of bring out the worst in human behaviors. Do people remember what the Yetzer Hara is? And does anyone want to take a stab at maybe explaining why that connection is important for our Musar work?
Mm.
That's the evil inclination, if you will, but it's more about excess, because you need hunger, you need food, you want to enjoy your food, but you don't need gluttony. That's taking it too far. If you deny that, yeah, I'm hungry, you're going to starve.
Yeah,
That's a little simplistic, Greg, but I hope it covers it.
yeah, that covers most of the essentials right there. And the Yetzer Hara is an essential part of who we are. Like, for example, imagination, I would say, is something that comes from the Yetzer Hara, our ability to kind of imagine the future. And unfortunately, when we're dealing with fear of scarcity, it's the imagination kind of run wild. We're imagining, being stuck in our bathroom without any toilet paper. So therefore, we're going to buy up, 10 years worth. Paul, did you want to add something?
Yeah, I think there's an attitude towards this that my mother brought when I was growing up. That we had some tough times. She was a single mother, and I mean, she grew up during the Depression, and she saw that her parents dealt with scarcity in a very positive way. When they needed to save money during the summer, they wouldn't rent and my grandfather was working in the Conservation Corps at the time, that they would just basically camp out for the summer. And so my mother just never thought twice about her bed was the back seat of a car. That's just the way things were. And her parents never treated it like, oh my God, what's going to happen? So I remember very clearly when we moved back into a home that was ours, when we had been living in an apartment for a while, and we had no furniture, but my mother approached it like, well, I've got kids and they love cardboard boxes, so this is going to be our furniture for a while. And it was like a game, right? So there's a way of doing like a Tai Chi or Aikido move on reality. You think of it as being a terrible thing. You can step back and take a deep breath and then think of how to make this into a more positive experience. So anyway, that's what I learned growing up, and I try to remember that when I'm getting really freaked out about stuff.
Well, thank you, Paul. I think that is a great segue to our next slide, but we'll hear from Wendy first, and then we'll take a look at that.
Well, I was just going to say that in cookbooks, there's a little page in the beginning or in the end, and it talks about if you run out of this particular item, then you substitute this, or if you run out of this particular item, then you substitute that. And when Paul's talking about his mom, it reminded me that my mom, she always had like a substitute, and she always was prepared. And I'm thinking, rather than fear scarcity, it's okay to get prepared. Like Karen was saying, there's some wisdom there. If you want to get prepared, that's okay.
Yeah, being prepared is good. That reminds me, it was my turn to cook dinner earlier this week, and like everything that like we had thought we had in the house to like make tacos was not here. We had like meat and seasoning and tomato. That was it. We had the tortillas. And so I'm like, oh my God, and what's going to happen? And then my wife was like, oh, we could substitute this, we could do that. And then I found some leftover zucchini, and we put it all together. So yeah, these things, again, if I got sort of paralyzed by fear, and I did have a few thoughts of like, am I going to get yelled at? Am I going to, what's going to happen? And it was okay. So I didn't let it paralyze me. Okay, so now we have a very interesting and somewhat challenging selection from the book of Jeremiah. So may we have a volunteer to read these two bullets?
Okay, I'll read it again. Nobody wants to.
Sure, Joanne.
Cursed is the person who trusts solely in people and makes his flesh his source of strength and turns away from God. He will be like a tree in the desert and will not see when good comes. He will inhabit the parched places of the desert, a salty, uninhabited land. Blessed is the person who trusts in God and whose hope God is, for he shall be like a tree planted by the waters and that spreads out its roots by the river, and shall not see when the heat comes, but its leaves shall be green, and shall not be anxious in the year of drought, nor shall it cease from yielding fruit.
Thank you.
Jeremiah.
Thank you. And I'd seen the second part of this, and I love this image of kind of the tree by the river, the tree by the waters. I'd never seen it paired with this first one before. And again, we may have differing views about the divinity on this call. And, you know, I don't want us to get hung up too much on turned away from God or trusting in God, but there is a certain attitude about life here, which I think this is talking about. And what is he referring to in these metaphors? What is the kind of life attitude that you're taking from this? For example, if we think about Paul's mother for the story he just shared, where was she inhabiting? Which of these two images, you know, sort of, do you think applies to her attitude about life? Paul, I hope it's okay if I use this example. Okay, great, thank you.
I'm gonna put my hand up.
I can't see everybody, so feel free to unmute. I'm leaving the screen up so I can, oh wait, I think this will let me see more of you. All right, I think I see most of you now. Not that people are rushing to put their hands up.
I think Paul's mother would be the second one. She wasn't anxious. She wasn't anxious. And she, I don't know where she stood spiritually or any of that, but she used what she had that the divine gave her to provide and live by the water. And this is just like a perfect example of the Central Valley in California. So we lived there for 10 years, and you could see those lone trees where the farmers were not, you know, didn't have the water. And then you could see the trees all growing right by the river. So they will grow by the river.
Yeah. Yeah, Carrie. Thank you.
I'm got headphones on, so I'm not sure if anybody can hear me, but what came to mind is the saying, you see the glass half full or you see it half empty. And people who see the glass half full are the ones that usually have faith in something and trust themselves to figure things out, and are positive thinking people. And Paul's mother is my mother-in-law. She's definitely the second person.
Yeah.
There's a certain, oh, sorry.
I'm done. Thank you.
There's a certain elegance and beauty in them, using what you have and saying, this is wonderful. Look what I have, rather than always saying, look what I don't have.
Yeah, we can have an image of a house where there's hardly anything in it and the children are sullen, or we can have an image of a house which is filled with life and kids sitting and playing on boxes, and, you know, one is sort of desert-like and one is more, you know, this lifelike. let's bring this back to like that initial, because like this is, all well and good. It's like, yeah, I'd rather be on channel number 2 for sure. That's a better way to live. Yeah, that's the quote right answer here while we're on the teleconference. But the question is how do we cultivate this? If bitachon is sort of about feeling okay, right? Because it's really the person who's sort of living in life is feeling okay, like feeling like they're going to be okay. And that's really what, bitachon and balance, trust and balance is all about, is, feeling like you're okay. Hopefully you're not feeling you're so okay that you feel like you don't need to wear a seatbelt or anything, but yeah, so what might it mean to sort of cultivate this?
I think there's a danger in trusting only in God. I really do. I mean, I've seen that happen with many people, There are people who think that they don't need the COVID shot. If it's their time, it's their time, and so be it. On the other hand, I guess I like the idea of pray as if everything depends on God, act as if everything depends on you. I think you need that partnership. I mean, recognizing if something is beyond your control, yeah, that's the time to rely on God. But if there's things within your control, then, well, anyway, Judaism teaches us that we are partners with God, right? And
yeah, absolutely.
God acts through people, right?
Yes, that's a very good point. That we can see the divine, we can see the divine acting through other people. And in that first part, I think what you're referring to, and I guess in the title of my slide, it's like, cursed is the person who only relies on other people. And that's a pretty strong statement, I think. In what ways might that be true or not true? Janet sort of gave the not true if you're thinking about the divine and other people. What are some times when maybe that's more true, or there's more of a danger we could fall into?
Well, there are politicians who rely on their fan base, right?
Sure. But we as individuals, where can we get into trouble?
I'll be right back.
Well, I think we need to realize that some things are just not in our control. And I think people that only rely on people and only rely on what they can touch, see, feel, taste, whatever, tend to be very controlling. And if they can't control something, it kind of freaks them out. But if you look at it and look at what you have, again, I believe in cultivating gratitude a lot. Big lesson I took from the pandemic. If you look around, you know that you're not in control of everything. You're not. So I don't know. I'm not sure where I was going with that.
Yeah, that was a big exclamation point. By the way, you're not in control of everything, That's for sure. Wendy.
I think that pregnancy is the perfect example of the partnership between the divine, trusting in the divine, and trusting in yourself and in other people. That's where I learned most of my trust was during pregnancies. I mean, you become pregnant, it's like a miraculous creation. It's I feel from the divine. And then you have 9 months of trust. You have to pour into that. And if you go to the doctor, which I did, and trusting in what the doctors say and what tests say and what other people say and what people who have been through that suggest that you do too. So it's just like a perfect little partnership to me.
Beautiful example, Wendy. Thank you. I want to show one more slide before we do our breakouts. And this, I think, has so much on it. I think we're going to be looking at this over the next couple of chapters, or this week and next week. And this is from Rabbi Deborah Kassoff from the Musar Torah commentary on the Parsha Va'ilech, which is from almost from the very end of the Torah. And it's, this first bullet is now at the end of his life, Moses has seemed to have achieved the state of trusting well-being that bitachon represents. Because this is a very short parsha, and this is after Moses has been told he's not going to be entering the promised land. And he's no longer sort of fighting that decree. In previous chapters, he's saying, hey, can't, come on, what's going on here? And he's more, telling other people to sort of be strong and resolute. So what do we think it means that Moses has achieved the state of trusted well-being? Do you buy that exclamation? For that's kind of where Moses is at this point in his life.
What's the alternative for him?
Well, what is the alternative? He sort of knows his life is coming to an end. He knows there are going to be other leaders. What choices do we have?
I mean, after he gave up asking, because God said, don't ask me again about this. His next thing was, well, who should we put in charge then of these people? Because they need someone. And so, he still has his initiative and his experience. And this commentary when God says, lean your hand on Joshua ben Nun, and and he does this in front of everyone, and he puts both his hands on him. It's like transferring power, giving him authority, and kind of a blessing. And that's a great thing. I mean, because he was a great man. So knowing that he's not going to go on, he wants the people to go on and be successful in entering the land and conquering it. And so he has faith that, they choose the right person, that's going to happen.
Yeah, so that's a beautiful example of Moses kind of going, sort of trusting that this is the right thing and the right next move. And I was thinking about, when I was in the corporate world, and there were some times when what I thought was the right thing to do isn't what was chosen. And I thought it was going to be bad for customers. I thought it was going to cost us money. I thought it was going to cost a lot of time and anger to be managed. So, I kept like fighting this decision. I was fighting it and fighting it. I was talking to this person, I'm talking to that person, and bitching to my friends. And, that's kind of maybe to answer Carrie's question, that's sort of the alternative. Instead of saying, okay, this decision's been made, this is going to happen. Fairly junior person, someone else has made the call. And rather than trust that things were going to work out and that the world wasn't going to end, I was like, no, I'm fighting, railing against, it's like that poem, do not go gently into that good night, right? It's like, is that how you want to go out? Like angry and railing and fighting, or
right?
That's, when you're 20, that's sort of a cool poem, but at this age, I'm like, I don't think that is how I want to go out. I want to have some love and gentleness in my life. Okay, so I've been talking, and now it is time for our breakout. So with your partner, having been through this past year and a half, does the universe seem benevolent to you? Do you feel abandoned by the divine, or did you feel the divine helped you get through, or do you feel the divine had no part in like your journey? So I like you each to kind of answer that. And when your partner's, there's no right or wrong answer. So when your partner is sharing, just listen and acknowledge what they have to say. And, be sure that you each have time to share. So I'm gonna stop the share. I'm gonna pop this into the chat. And then I will open the breakout rooms. Okay, so you should see, okay, everybody's got a partner. So you should see something on the screen now. Stephanie, do you see the, and there we go. If you've been watching and streaming, thank you so much for being here. This is where things come to an end for our streaming. If you are watching the recording, just hang on a second because I'm going to pause the recording in a moment and we'll be back. And while I'm talking, if you want to like us, like my channel on YouTube or like this video, that would be greatly appreciated. You're always welcome to come by AmericanMusar.com, join our mailing list to get our bi-weekly emails that introduce each topic. So with that, I will say good night.
Is it? Yeah. So it's 2 weeks before you have your vacation?
Yeah, so I'll be here next week and then the following week I'll be on vacation.
Got it. Okay.
All right, welcome back everyone. So would anyone care to share some insights they had or something, again, without sharing what your partner shared, but is there anything that you thought was interesting that you would like to share with the group?
Well, for me, Shabbat has been my anchor, being able to provide for my family and create a special meal every week. Maybe it's the same meal, but it brings us together. We put the flowers on the table, we light the candles, and it's just something that we were able to do every week during the pandemic. I don't know that it'll continue once we get out and about.
Mm-hmm. Beautiful. Thank you. Wonderful, wonderful practice.
For me, it was just practice of gratitude, looking at what I had, not focusing on what I didn't have, and knowing that I had the skills to do certain things that would get me through, and learning new skills.
Thank you, Carol. Did anyone, yeah, Wendy.
Well, Paul and I came to a conclusion that during the pandemic, we struck a balance between trust in God, trust in people, so that we didn't just go about our lives saying, oh yeah, nothing's going to happen to us. We wore our masks. We, did things that we knew would protect us. But on the other hand, we still trusted in the divine for whatever this universe holds. We didn't, yeah, I think we pretty much came to that conclusion that we had a balance. And it's easier than fear.
That's a great point. Yeah, fear is no fun. Anybody here really like fear or like being afraid? Anyone? Anyone know? No, don't all raise your hands at once. Okay, maybe on a roller coaster, but I'm even too afraid to go on that. So yeah, thumbs down on the roller coaster from Carol and from fear in general. Okay, let's take a look. Yeah, Nancy, we got time for one more.
Oh, I was just going to say, I question the divine and really what that means. And so I cannot, me personally, give credit to anything or everything that happens in the universe to the divine. I just give so much thanks to the scientists and the people and, everybody who came together during the pandemic to create the vaccine and all the knowledge that's out there that is given to people. If that's the divine working in us, maybe there's so much out there that we don't know. So I just give credit to so much. I give thanks to the divine if there is, but I still question what that means. And I give thanks to the human beings who make us safe.
Thank you, Nancy. Thank you for saying that. I think that's really really important, to feel safe enough to question the divine. And there's a lot of ways to kind of inhabit these practices. And there are ways that we can practice and cultivate bitachon without, without fully embracing the divine, or maybe even without remotely embracing the divine. So absolutely, there's very much space for that. Okay, so let's look at our practice opportunity for the next week. So our mantra, and I'm going to put both of these in the chat. That work? It did. Okay. Our mantra is balance, trust in a loving God, a reliable universe with taking initiative. So it's back to this question, where's our trust? Where do we need to take action? And what can kind of give us that healthy level of comfort and that sort of ease of living without the fear and the worry? So I thought this practice was really interesting. And that is to choose something you're doing during the day. And this is Rabbi Jaffe's words, which I was really challenged by. And at first I was like, there's no way I'm going to show that to everybody. And I'm like, well, that's kind of an interesting reaction. So let's see where people go with it. So are you approaching this effort out of trust or out of despair? And what I would add to this, and what I did add here, is try to mindfully focus while you're doing that activity. Try to mindfully focus on this issue of trust, while you're doing the activity, and how does that change things? Are you just blindly trusting that driving through the stop sign you'll be okay, or are you so worried that some car might come out of nowhere, that people are honking at you behind you to kind of move along and get on in traffic? And to really think about your activities. Where is trust kind of coming in? How do we bring this to the forefront? And I've never tried anything like this before, so I'm going to try this. I'm going to see what comes up, and so I invite you to try it as well, and we'll see kind of have an opportunity to kind of share our experiences next week. So with that, let us end as we begin to close our sacred space. Please close your eyes, taking a deep breath through the nose and hold, and exhale through the mouth and hold. Let us just, within your body, just try to find a place of calm and peace. Imagine yourself as that tree by the river, with deep roots that can draw upon water. So if the air becomes hot, you'll still be okay. You'll still find nourishment. And that you'll get through until the next rain. Now tilt your head back and smile. Let your jaw relax and take just a moment of gratitude. This time journeying together with these other souls as we strive to unlock our own divine potential. And when you're ready, you may open your eyes. Well, friends, thank you so much for being here. I wish you a wonderful week, an early Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
And I look forward to seeing you next week.
And Shabbat Shalom.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Shabbat shalom.